Let's talk about Gwen. Gwen is League's newest AP fighter designed for the top lane, and even if she belongs to the class of champions I personally enjoy the least, she's still enough to bring me out of my YouTube hiatus. I got together with my community to test Gwen on the PvE and learn as much as possible from a single play session, then supplemented my understanding with practice tool experiments. But as usual, remember that this video is supposed to be a primer to help you start the learning process and give you ideas. It's not necessarily a definitive guide. As usual, we'll start with her abilities, which are all very simple. Gwen's passive adds % max HP magic damage to her auto attacks, with a few bonuses. If her target is a champion, she'll heal for a large percentage of this bonus damage. If the target is a low health minion, this passive has a soft execute effect. It's a very simple passive to make the auto attacks of an AP champion more potent. Gwen's Q deals minor magic damage several times in a small cone, instead dealing true damage and applying her passive on each hit if the target is in the tiny center of the ability. Gwen's Q always hits at least twice, but she can generate up to 4 stacks by auto-attacking, which adds snips to the ability. Extra snips don't affect the cast time and sandwich themselves between the first and last hit, which is good because Gwen is rooted during this ability's cast. While the last snip deals the same damage as the first 5 combined, most of the damage comes from the rapid application of Gwen's passive, so make sure you're hitting the center. Gwen's W creates a zone around her, granting her some resistances and rendering her completely immune to everything outside the zone. If you are not standing in Gwen's W, you cannot click her, you cannot hit her, and you cannot CC her, but she can still be fought as usual by anyone inside. Gwen can recast this ability once and only once to move the zone's center to her location, and W automatically recasts if she attempts to leave the zone. Since you're completely untargetable, Gwen can use this ability to drop minion aggro, which is likely to be its most practical use during the laning phase. Gwen's E is a short-range dash that grants her bonus attack speed, attack range, and on-hit magic damage for a short duration. If Gwen can use one buffed auto attack, then half of E's cooldown is refunded. The dash is an auto reset and can be cast during any ability, which offsets the drawback of being rooted during Q. With ranks, you can keep its excellent buff active 100% of the time as long as you can hit something. I have found the most success maxing this ability first instead of Q. I sincerely believe it's her best ability, including even W. Gwen's R is a linear skill shot that deals damage, applies her passive, and slows all targets it hits. If Gwen can deal damage with auto attacks or Q within a short time period, then she can unlock up to 2 recasts. The initial cast fires 1 needle, then 3, then 5, so each recast deals more damage than the last, and you can apply your passive up to 9 times. The ability does start its cooldown from the moment the first needle is fired. Each target will only be fully slowed by 1 needle. Every other needle from any recast will then apply a reduced slow to that target. The ability can be used to catch up to an opponent and chase them down, but not from max range unless you have access to a minion wave. You could instead use this when you're already fighting to make it a bit more difficult for your opponent to escape, and that's when the passive damage will be most useful. Just be mindful of the cast time because your opponent will have a short window to dodge. Since Gwen is an auto attacker, her combos and interactions are simple. Using any dash to exit her W will extend the range in which you can pull it. This includes Flash. As mentioned before, you can cast E during any cast time, including Q and R, and though RE is very practical, there's not much reason to use QE and miss your first snip when you can instead EQ. Even if the first snip doesn't deal a lot of damage, it's still a passive application that you have no reason to give up. Add an R before your EQ to make it harder to escape your true damage, or if you're building Everfrost, the best combo I could discover was R, Everfrost, EQ, auto attack. Her combos aren't exactly long or complicated. At least not until someone discovers some crazy hidden mechanic. I always emphasize that the day 1 videos are a primer, not a guide. They're supposed to direct your learning. In this case, I'm very sorry, but I don't have a lot of concrete information. Gwen, on top of belonging to my worst class of champions, released onto the PvE in a state that felt almost completely ineffective. Better players than I have also struggled with finding any form of purpose or consistent winning strategy, which I hate saying. I think she has a much higher skill floor than you would expect, while also just being horribly underpowered. But that doesn't mean we can't come up with theories of what Gwen might accomplish later in her lifetime as a champion. I'm going to share everything that I discovered to make my life easier in-game, and everything I can think of to explore post-release. The mark of a good Gwen player will be in W and E usage. While E's buff is great, we can also use this like Fiora Q to poke and harass in lane. 250 auto range is outstanding and should reward players with good spacing, even if you're only going for 1 auto. Gwen's W should be defining her kit, but there's a few things you need to be concerned about. The resistances are very low, and it does almost nothing to a melee opponent who sits inside. A very skilled Gwen can likely use the W reposition and fight at the very edge to dodge a few critical abilities, but W won't be a factor in 1v1 for most of a fight. Your opponent will either simply enter your zone or wait out the cooldown because Gwen doesn't have a lot of ways to keep people from leaving a fight. Coupled with the fact that she's an AP auto attacker, and you can safely conclude that her pre-6 laning is not the strongest. I have two theories as to what her playstyle should be, both of which revolve around her W. The first is a pseudo frontliner. Gwen has a lot of tools to deal with tanks, and in the context of a front-to-back teamfight, maybe she's supposed to look for fights against the front line by using her immunity to the backline. In that case though, what's stopping the tank from CCing her and letting the backline approach? The answer might just be in skilled usage of her W reposition. The second theory is that Gwen is supposed to find someone on the edge of a skirmish and force a 1v1. This idea makes a lot of sense. Carry tops of this nature are usually effective duelists, but while Gwen has all the tools to split push effectively in an auto-based kit seemingly designed for duels, she has no defensive abilities that work against the person she's actually dueling. Unless of course you're very good at using W and the opponent has a meaningful ability with range. Conqueror immediately stood out as the obvious rune for Gwen, but as I discovered just how poor her laning can be, I started finding a lot of value in fleet footwork. We weren't able to test this, but I now wonder if she actually wants to run Grasp of the Undying. If skilled max range E-poke turns out to be optimal laning, then maybe the sustain will get her through lane while the HP stacking will bolster her 1v1 potential. For items, I rushed Nashers in most games with defensive boots, but once I started maxing E, I also started questioning if that was the right call. Gwen's E attack speed buff is so powerful that she may be able to get away with just stacking AP and resistances with no actual attack speed in her build. The only mana mythic I would ever consider is Everfrost, because Gwen does not struggle with mana. Riftmaker and Rocket Belt both make sense, but to be honest, I can't tell you which is best. One very interesting build I saw from Riot August was Riftmaker, Lichbane, and Cosmic Drive, with the reasoning that if Gwen has very few ways to actually keep an opponent in a fight that Gwen should win, we may as well boost her stickiness with move speed and increase her burst so shorter fights are stronger. But with no definite guiding purpose, it's very difficult to argue that anyone has the best runes or build this early. Again, I'm sorry, but all I can say is that you'll have to experiment. So that's Gwen, the first new release to fall so far out of my comfort zone and to release so seemingly unplayable that I had to break my rule of considering a champion's power level on day one because it directly inhibited our learning process. Her weaknesses are clear. Her kit isn't good against stronger duelists, and it's going to take a lot of mastering this champion's nuances and creative solutions to her flaws to really discover where she shines. I'm hearing rumors that she can full clear the jungle leashless in time for Crab at full health. If that's true, Gwen may find a home in the jungle where her laning can't be punished. But please, if you think the champion looks fun, don't be dissuaded by this unsatisfying conclusion. Play her, master her nuances, maybe wait for a buff or two, and discover how she wants to play, because I am absolutely positive that even if Gwen releases weak, there is something to this champion that we just don't understand yet.